The South Florida media has now watched 2 OTA practices setting up for next week's mandatory minicamp. I am your host, Omar Kelly. Joining me now is Isaiah Smalls, Miami Herald beat reporter, who is enjoying thoroughly the practice in the rain that we watched yesterday, Isaiah. Obviously, there is a lot of talk that Tua Tagovailoa cannot throw the ball in the rain. I disagree with that. It's based on the Tennessee loss during a Brian Flores era, where nobody, well, yeah, actually, and I guess the weather has to be perfect for Tua to have success. That's the narratives that are out there. The Dolphins practiced in the rain yesterday. What were some of your top takeaways from that OTA session?
I mean, just the very idea that they're practicing in the rain, right? Like, you would think that it would be somewhat kind of self-explanatory. We live in South Florida. It's hurricane season. It's going to rain down here, right? So you would think that this wouldn't be so big of a deal. But I mean, it kind of is, right? Because it is this. It's a sign that the culture is trying. They're trying to make a culture shift. I'm not saying
I've seen some practices in the rain before. If there is not thunder, they will keep it outside generally. Like, I've covered this team for 17 years. There's a very clear line. If it's thundering, they'll take it in. They'll take it inside. Now, yesterday and all of this week, there's been nothing but rain, and more rain. If you have a lawn, I hope you put some weed and feed down, because it's going to do well. But I prefer practices that go inside because they're less sloppy. We saw a lot of wet balls. I felt like some of these quarterbacks, particularly Zach Wilson, probably threw the ball better in the wet ball situation than he did. Yeah, than he did the first practice we were out there. I thought he was one of the top standouts to me that we had in practice. Obviously, I think Tua had the best day, but based on, if I were to compare Zach Wilson practice 1 to Zach Wilson practice 2, there was a clear difference. And now I kind of see the guy that maybe developed a little bit in Denver, as opposed to the first practice where I saw the guy that started for the Jets. And I was like, yeah, that guy ain't good.
Yeah, he definitely looked good yesterday for sure. Had some nice,
good or better.
He looked straight. He looked, to me, that's why I'm gonna be honest. I personally, he looked a little bit better than Tua yesterday, because there was. That's what I'm saying. He looked good because he looked better than Tua, and Tua's QB1, right? So that's why when you said that, like, I obviously I didn't see the first OTAs because I was writing, but first practice. But yes, like yesterday to me, because he was the one that hit on the few deep balls, right? He had some good reads, right? I mean, he threw the ball, but had a one ball that was like underthrown, but the guy still should have caught it, right? To me, he looked like the best quarterback. Obviously, that doesn't really mean anything. There's no pads, but he looked like the best quarterback yesterday. Throwing the ball. All
right.
Throwing the ball.
You're gonna get Tua fans in the Hornets nest.
I know. It's gonna be all in my DMs, but I don't. I'm look. It's the eyeball test. They weren't.
You just telling people what you saw. I didn't. I can't argue to you that Tua was better, except Tua didn't throw an interception. But was his unit
that interception? First of all, he would have gotten sacked that play. The play that you're talking about, he would have gotten sacked. So it wasn't even. You know what I'm saying? And so
we're talking about Zach Wilson. Yes.
Yeah, Zach Wilson would have got sacked that play. And then just remember what I said. He looked better throwing the ball. The interception is a non-starter, because the play would have been over, right? Unless he would have done some Herculean effort to throw Bradley Chubb off of him, it was a sack. All right, so that Jalen Wright actually looked really good. Obviously, we got to talk to him a little bit yesterday. He had 2 runs of like plus 15 yards of him just, finding the hole and just, making that one cut and going. And he looked noticeably bigger to me in just a little bit. He put on 6 pounds, but he looked a little bit just stockier to me in the in the meeting rooms, or I'm sorry, in the media room. But those are the two biggest standouts for me. Obviously, it's early. And actually one more. The defense overall, I think, won the day. I don't know how you feel about that, but I think the defense won the day. There was quite a few plays. Grayson Murphy had like 3 sacks on the day. Like, it was incredible.
You ain't even know who he was.
I did not know who that man was before. I ain't gonna lie to you, but he looked phenomenal yesterday.
Man, you and these. Hold on, wait a minute. Phenomenal.
3 sacks. Let's. If you have a 3-sack, wait. Pause on everything. If you have a 3-sack game, what is the word you use to describe that?
Exemplary. No, it was a good day. It was a good day. It was a good day.
3 sacks is a good day. Oh my God.
Okay. Understand. I also always factor in who he's going against, who he's working against. Like, we're talking third teamer on third teamer crime. They don't have really a third team left tackle. They don't even have a second team left tackle, if we're gonna be honest. I liked Grayson Murphy from last year's training camp. I thought he probably was going to make the team before he got injured. Suffered, I believe it was a knee injury that landed him, and so he redshirted all season. Have I seen more from him than Muhammad Kamara? Probably. That doesn't necessarily mean that Kamara can't turn it on and start lighting it up. But Grayson Murphy, he looks like a very productive player. But let's be honest here. He's still not on the Cameron Good, Quentin Bell program. He's got a long ways to go, but I liked what I saw from him. Liked what I saw another day from Bradley Chubb, still beating up on backups. Like what I saw from
Chop too had a pretty good game.
Yeah, Chop was an orange jersey player. He threw on some young people music, which was a weird description for coming from you.
Look, man, I'm turning 29 next week. You know, I gotta start adopting them old head behaviors. You know, them young bulls over there, man.
You can fight it as long as you want to, as long as you're not in the 30 club. You can still claim young dude status. Channing Tindall made a play.
He did make a play. Channing Tindall did make a play.
It was funny to hear the defense erupt and Channing Tindall making one play.
But, you know, he is one of those guys. I think, you know, the team knows it. Like, he was one of those guys that, you know, hasn't necessarily panned out yet. You know, I talked to him about like a month ago. I ran into him outside, and, you know, he said that this is his year. So, you know, got to give credit where credit's due. You know, he made
it's always a Channing Tindall year.
But,
his position coach said, this is the first. He normally doesn't share what he says in exit meetings, but he will share this. This is the first time in Channing Tindall's career where he's not only going to have the same defense, but the same coordinator. He's not going to have to learn something new or try to impress somebody who already comes in with these formulated conclusions. My thing about Channing Tindall is everybody on the depth chart shouldn't be coming here and leapfrogging you. And that's always the case. And I don't really see it changing now with KJ Britt and Willie Gay, who, by the way, I actually was very intrigued by the way that they used Willie Gay. If you go back to his career in Kansas City and his career with New Orleans, not really necessarily New Orleans, he's been sort of a hybrid player, an inside linebacker / pass rusher. I think he can still do those things. You feel his presence right along with Grayson Murphy. Let me get to some of these offensive players, because I did like what I saw in Jalen Wright. It's consistent with what we saw the first week of OTAs. What I found interesting is when we started talking to Jalen, and I particularly asked him, okay, you had a lot of run early in the season. You had a relative decent amount of success, and then you just disappeared. It was a vanishing act. Primarily, the expectation is, you know, coaches didn't like what they were seeing, and he basically got shut down. Now, it's not like Raheem Mostert was getting more opportunities or carries or balls. Nope, it just became the Devon A. Chain show.
For sure.
He got a little that's the past. That's in the past. I'm gonna talk about the past.
Yeah. I think what McDaniel said was a little bit more revealing. He used a word that to me, anytime I hear that, my ears kind of go up. He said consistency. That's what he's looking for Jalen. He's looking for more consistency. And to me, you can kind of speculate. We can speculate all day what that means, right? But I think these buzzwords that McDaniel has used, chopping wood. He's here every day, chopping wood. So to hear him say consistency means to me, at least, and I don't know how you feel, but it's not that chopping wood mentality, right? Like he's not there. I'm not saying that he's not there every day working, but there's something with his work that I hope that he seems to have a handle on now.
There's more of a hunger. You could tell whenever he gets his opportunities that he's trying to maximize those. Yes. And I give him props and praise because it's you always want to see a guy progress and take that next step, and you're seeing it right now. The body, there's a little bit of a transformation, the speed, the burst, it's showcasing a little bit more right now. I'm also very impressed with impressed with Ollie Gordon the second. Yeah. For a guy his size, and I really have to see him when pads go on, but for a guy his size, he moves fast. He gets through that hole. He gets through that hole, and he's gone.
Yes.
So it'll be interesting to see if he can continue to play with that size. Let's move on to some of the non-favorable topics. Primarily, we've got two absences that are critical. Jonnu Smith, who's going to be making just short of $4.1 million this upcoming season, unless that contract gets retouched. He is not a top 30 player salary-wise at any of the tight end position, which, for Jonnu, stab me in the heart, just twist the blade. And then we've got Zach Sieler, who I believe he's on the books for $10.2 million this year. Both of them are turning 30. Zach Sieler is the 50th highest paid defensive lineman in the NFL. So there are guys who are less productive than him that are making $17 million. And that's the conservative realm. So now that you have two leaders of your team, two players who are drastically underpaid at their position, how, as the Miami Dolphins, do you address that? Especially when they're basically saying, "Yeah, we'll come to OTAs when we get that pay raise."
I mean, they got to get Jalen off the books.
Jalen ain't stopping them from doing nothing.
Look, I feel you. I know. I mean, look. I think something. If I'm Zach Sieler, right, and I just saw the big contract Milton Williams just got, right, knowing Milton Williams. I'm pretty sure Milton Williams hasn't had a double-digit sack season, right? Let alone back-to-back double-digit sack season.
Yeah.
You gonna feel some type of way. Look, Dolphins, you got to get the deal done, right? You got to, because
do they? Because he's signed for 2 more seasons. By the way, just for the record, do they have to get a deal done?
They don't have to, but with what Zach Sieler represents in that locker room, I think you got to keep a guy like that happy, because a guy like that who's happy, right? He's a guy who got it out the mud, right? And I think those are the type of guys that you want to have as the poster child for your organization, right? Yeah. Like the Tyreek Hills, the Jalen Waddles, the Tua Tagovailoas, that's cool, right? But even obviously it's a little bit different situation. But when you have the guys that are small school guys, right? Tyreek obviously falls in that category, but the small school guys who really got it out the mud and who kind of haven't let that ego inflate.
Got it off the waiver wire.
I think that those are the guys that you want to keep happy, because they're good locker room guys. And what I'm interested in, right, is we heard Zach Sieler talk a lot about what he learned from Calais, right? And this would be the first year that he's putting that into action, right? And so I think you want to keep that guy happy, because you think about that defensive front, right? When you think about the KG, he has to look up to Zach Sieler as a veteran, right? You want to have that mentorship not organization, but that mentorship relationship strong, right? I just think you got to give it to a guy like Zach Sieler. Now on flipping with Jonnu, I think that's a little bit more difficult. I'm gonna be honest. That's a lot more difficult because he had the success last year, right? And it gets to a question of, do you pay a guy based off of 1 year performance? I think that's the question.
Well, hold on, wait a minute. He's performed previously in his career.
He has.
Now, am I raising him to the bar of top 5 tight ends after one season, turning 30? Probably not.
Yeah,
but I could make if I'm Jonnu, I could make an and his agent Drew Rosenhaus, I can make an easy argument that, hey, my paycheck should be doubled at least.
Yeah. No.
Put some respect on my name.
I agree, and that's why I believe they should get that deal done too. I'm just saying it's a little bit trickier when you're thinking just from a philosophy standpoint. I agree with what you're saying, that he deserves the money for sure because of his performance last year. But I think it ultimately gets down to, do we think the guy that is getting up in age, that's had one, like, that is coming off of his best season, does he deserve the money? I think he does. 30. I mean, what did he rank? Like 32nd among all tight ends. He definitely deserves to be at least in the teens, a little bit. But
here's the interesting point that I would like to raise to you, because a lot of times we know the teams are having conversations. We know they're discussing discussing a deal with Christian Wilkins, and we were all like, oh man, they couldn't get a deal done because Christian Wilkins turned his nose up at $17-18 million a year, and some of us thought that was crazy. And then Christian goes out on the market and he gets $24 million a year for the first 3 years of his deal with the Vegas Raiders. Sometimes the organization is offering you a fair contract. You just don't necessarily feel like you want that deal. And in the Jonnu situation, especially when I know both sides, I know the Pittsburgh Steelers organization pretty good. I know the people inside the organization. I know the Miami Dolphins organization pretty good. It ain't coming from the Miami Dolphins organization that this Pittsburgh trade is out there, and that it's resurfaced because a tight end suffered an injury. So do you feel this is more of a, we can get a draft pick for him? And what would that draft pick need to be to make it make sense to you? Or do you feel this is, we can't get a deal done because you're not asking for anything reasonable?
That's a good question.
I kind of ask those for a living.
That's a good question. I because we've heard that Jonnu wants to stay, I'd have to be inclined to believe the narrative that's more so we can get a good draft pick for him, right? But even then, I don't even think the draft pick is going to be that good.
What's a good draft pick though? What's a good draft pick? Do we have to get? Because I say this for Jalen Ramsey, who hasn't been moved yet. I'm actually not surprised he hasn't been moved yet, because realistically, if I'm Steve Ross, I'm not paying any more of the bill. Like, I'm sorry, I already put down $4 million of the $24 million salary. I'm not paying any more of that bill. Mm-hmm. Like, unless you sweeten it and you get me into day 2 of the draft, maybe I'll swap you a 4th for a 3rd, and maybe I'll consider, like, taking on another extra $4 million. But I'm not paying you to take my best player. Like, does that make any sense?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Like I just signed this guy, and then teams, you want me to pay you to take my best player, who will probably be a top 5 player on your team? Like, how does this make sense? Except for the fact that you don't want to play for you no more.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see what you're saying though, to me, is a rather difficult, I guess, dichotomy situation that you're saying, right? Like, it's either they can get a good draft pick, because I think personally, the best maybe you'll get is a 5th. Maybe.
Which one?
For Jonnu.
Okay, for Jonnu. Yeah.
Maybe.
That don't make no sense.
What do you mean?
How am I going to give up a Pro Bowl player who led my team in every category statistically in franchise history for a 5th round pick?
But what else makes sense though? What else do you
make him come play on his regular existing salary?
Obviously, do you think that's gonna happen?
He has no choice. With the new CBA, players do not have a choice. They can sit out all the camp. He has to show up. He cannot participate in camp. But when the season rolls around, he got to be there every day. Otherwise, he's subjected to a $50,000 fine.
Yeah, those fines gonna add up.
Those fines gonna add up by the time you get to week 3 of your holdout, you're gonna be playing for free.
You're playing for free.
So
hey, it's a difficult position to be in. Does he deserve the money? Yes. Will the Dolphins get it done? Who knows? Because at the end of the day, what's your alternative? That's my biggest question. Like, if I'm Drew Rosenhaus, I'm asking, what are y'all gonna do? Y'all rolling the balls out there with Hayden Rucci, Tanner Connor, and Jalen Connors? Like, be honest.
Julian Hill, you forgot you just
Julian Hill is not a pass catcher. Farrell Brown is not a pass catcher from the position. They're not. So Tanner Connor is basically gonna be your guy.
I mean, at one point, Durham Smythe was the third leading receiver on this team. Like let's put it in perspective here. I don't know if they need like a game changer, especially if your attention's going to the outside guys, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, and then you've got a 60,000 checkdowns that you throw into the Devon A chain. You'll be all right. But now the question is,
I disagree.
You disagree? I mean, hold on. You were the number 1 offense and the number 6 offense without a tight end.
You're right. And then what happened the next year? What happened the next year? All that deep ball stuff got shut down. So you need somebody that's somewhat dynamic to catch balls underneath and make plays, which is what he did. And I haven't necessarily seen that from Tanner Connor. He had a good day yesterday in OTAs. Like we forgot to mention that he had a straight day yesterday in OTAs. But
Tanner's gonna kill you in OTAs. He's always gonna shine in OTAs, and then when they put the pads on, he just vanishes. Poof.
So then, like, I don't think the Dolphins have much of a choice then, because maybe I think you can give him I don't think maybe double it, right? Double it would be,
double is fair. Now, if I'm offering you $9 million a year, if I'm offering you a 2-year, I'm giving you an extension. I'm giving you 18 over 2, probably guaranteeing 10. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not paying you until you're 33. Like, what are we doing here? Like, the reality of the situation is that there's pressure applied by the Dolphins and pressure applied by the agents, primarily because both the clients are turning 30. Once you turn 30 in the NFL, they want to put you down. They want to put you down, or you at least gonna have to start playing for a discount. Zach Sieler's already playing for a discount, so you can't get any more discounty.
That's right.
So now the interesting part is Zach has already pulled one of these holdouts before. It didn't necessarily get him paid because he showed up at training camp and he worked, and Zach Sieler's a worker. The only problem that I have is the message that it sends to your team and this locker room. Mike McDaniel talked about how, this is the era of young players have to play and have to contribute. And, you're trying to get them to the point where, they can get to the money. Well, here you go, 2 players who should technically have gotten to the money that you're basically saying, there ain't no money for you. So now what message does that send to your team, especially when it's a Zach Sieler, who is arguably your leader of your defense, and Jonnu Smith, who right now I'd have to put in the driver's seat to be a captain now that Tyreek has been evicted out of captaincy. So, I maybe Devon Achane becomes a captain, but these are guys that you're going to have to lean on. And then especially when you're Mike McDaniel, and let's be real about it, you have a fragile locker room, you have a fragile team. Do you want to you kind of need those guys you can lean on? And I don't know if you can lean on me unless you improve my money. I
feel you. Look, money solves a lot of problems, man. I'll be there smiling very big if my bank account looks right, versus
Yeah, a lot of people were smiling big last year, and then they just basically was like, yeah, we out. We deuces. Things didn't go the way that we wanted them to. We out. Or we want out. Tyreek has learned he's not getting out. Let's talk a little bit about other players. We got Austin Jackson a little bit more involved in the work and the action. I can honestly tell you, I've seen Austin Jackson better. He credits Chop Robinson's development and improvement. Yeah. And I like what Austin said, which is, it's kind of hard to evaluate me when I don't have any pads on. And it's true. I generally don't go crazy about pressures. Now, if you just getting beaten one-on-one, okay. But, a speedy guy like Chop Robinson, no pads, not even being able to slow down. Austin Jackson can't even punch into you.
About to say, he can do his chest for real.
Yeah. He can't even dig into his chest for real. I'm not going to sit here and go crazy. But it's just a good starting point to see Austin Jackson on the field, see him get more work. And then we learned about Patrick Paul, who has seemingly lost weight. I don't know how to tell, but
you can tell he looked a little slimmer, just a little bit.
He's a huge man. How about
he's a huge man? But last year, not to say he was bad, but he looked slimmer this year. I don't know how
he's working on his abs right now.
He's working on his abs.
Hey, I mean, they got abs. 300-pounders got abs.
They do. He looks good. He looks good. He looks Looks quicker too out there a little bit too.
Yeah, I like what I've seen from him from his rookie season. Brian Baldinger actually did a breakdown of film from him, and he had his moments. But let's not pretend like the Houston game was flawless, because it wasn't. Let's not pretend like I think what other game did he play? Was it Tennessee? He got in one game after. Yes, it was Tennessee.
Yeah.
Ooh, that wasn't good. So he's going to get opportunities. The question is he ready for that mantle, that throne, that responsibility? And he talked about Teron Armstead. You said Teron said he ready.
He did. He said, and Patrick believes it himself. I mean, he gave a great quote. I'm built for this, man. And I think he's approaching it with the right mindset, right? I think a lot of times when you have these guys that get into when they're becoming the starters, you gotta own it, right? And you gotta do it. Sometimes you gotta psych yourself up, regardless. You know what I'm saying? Because if the thing is, if you're not your biggest fan, who else is gonna be? No one's gonna support you unless you sing in your own praises, right? So I think I like where his mentality is, where his mindset is. And look, man, if you have a guy like Teron Armstead bigging you up, I feel like you could run through a wall, man. So we obviously time will tell, right? We'll know pretty early in the season whether or not he's ready for it. But I'm excited, at least from what we're hearing.
Yeah, I still am a little bit concerned with depth where they are at the left tackle spot.
100%.
Yeah, it's not good. And then another area where there is some concern is the cornerback secondary unit. I really don't have that much of an issue with the safeties. However, the cornerback, it's a never-ending churn in terms of the guys that are at the forefront. Kendall Sherfield yesterday. We saw a lot of Jason Marshall Jr. yesterday. Who was the orange jersey? Chop Robinson was the orange jersey player, but Storm Duck had the orange jersey earlier in the week. Cater Coho looks like the best cornerback on the team. I don't know how people should or want to feel about that. Cater, I'm at the point where, I might need Cater on the boundary more than I need him in the nickel. I'm just being honest with you. Like, if you're my best cornerback, I'm not limiting you to 700 snaps. You need to be on the field for 1,000 snaps. And that's kind of where Cater is. Now, am I certain that he's going to hold up? Because I don't know. I've seen highs and lows of Cater, and he stepped up. He's showing that he's ready for the mantle of the responsibility. My only concern is, who is going to lead that unit during the season? Is it really going to be Cater? Because right now, that unit's very green.
Yeah. And I think we're seeing it play out on the field in real time. D. Eskridge caught a few long balls on the defense.
I like D. Eskridge, by the way.
I know you like him. The guys were getting beat off the ball very easily.
Yes.
And it's a little bit concerning, right? It's going to be one of those things that are talked about ad nauseum just because of the Jalen Ramsey situation.
Until it gets addressed.
Yes, until it gets addressed for sure.
And then hopefully it'll be addressed properly, because we've gone some stretches where, you throw a patch on there and you think it's all right. And it's not.
It's not. We definitely need long-term fixes at that position.
I don't think there's going to be any long-term fixes.
Look, you're completely correct. You're completely correct. And
unless they're trading for a player, and that's my hope, because the situation doesn't make no sense without it.
We made to talk about this last month on the podcast, so let's try to get that out the way. I had said, I'll pose a question to you. I had said last week I did a little bit of a mailbag, and someone asked me what I thought what the returns would be for Jalen Ramsey. I think I believe I said like a fourth round is probably the most realistic, but in a dream scenario, it would be kind of a swap with the Green Bay Packers, the Dolphins getting Jair Alexander, because the money matched up somewhat, obviously sending away Jalen Ramsey. How do you feel about that trade?
Jair Alexander's on the block because his deal is bad and he's got durability issues. Do I really want a player with durability issues coming down here? Probably not. Do I really want a player who's has to have his contract retouched? And is he willing to have his contract retouched? They didn't trade him now. So what makes me think that they're going to trade him? I think that this is a situation that they're just going to try to stare him down. But I also don't think that Jalen Ramsey's going to Green Bay. I just don't see, he has not played ever in a cold weather climate city. So why would he choose Green Bay? Unless, if he's chasing a title, okay, you can go to Green Bay and enter the equation, and probably I look at Jalen Ramsey as a player who will improve your team by 1 to 2 wins. Now, if you're a team that you think you're 1 to 2 wins away from being in the Super Bowl, okay, let's make it happen. I think Baltimore is a good spot for him.
Cold
place, but they're a title contender though. They're going to be a title.
Early in the conversation, this is a question. I think we're 1 or 2 wins away from the Super Bowl. I'm just,
So are the Lions, and I think that's a good spot for Jalen Ramsey. The question is, does he want to go live in? I'm not of the opinion that Jalen Ramsey has no say in the situation, because I know Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey has pretty much all the say in the situation, because the last thing anybody is ever going to do is force Jalen Ramsey to do something that he doesn't want to do. That's not going to end up good for you or anybie. So it'll be interesting to see. Let me bring some things from a negative standpoint that I have noticed, and I am a little bit concerned about. Nick Westbrook, Ikine. 2 practices, I got nothing for you. This was supposed to be your number 3 receiver.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Eric Uzukama, 4th round pick many moons ago. I don't think there's a lot of people still waiting on Eric Uzukama to show up. But been AWOL. That's not something that's encouraging. And then Pharaoh Brown, the new free agent tight end. I get it. He's 31 years old, but he's probably the slowest man I've ever seen. As slowest tight end. Let me be. I mean, slow. And we've seen some slow. Like, he makes Durham Smythe seem fast, which is, Durham was pretty damn slow. We talked about the left tackle situation. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. This is a panic point for me, for the organization. That and interior guard. Right now, your situation is Liam Eichenberg is going to come to the rescue whenever it's time. You just got to wrap your mind around it and make sure you're comfortable with it. Yeah. And then the defensive linemen. I've honestly seen nothing from any of those big guys. And I get it. They're not really pass rushers, but it would be nice to see them collapse the pocket, stop some runs in the backfield, get their hands on some of these tailbacks. Not seeing it. And then we talked about the secondary, which is anybody's guess. You can name 4 players, 5 players, and I probably can't argue to you whether or not they'd be starting or not. Like, I can't. We think Ashton Davis, Iffy, Melifonwu, and then who else? Cater Kohu, and then who else?
Storm Duck.
All right, that's a good name, solid name. Cam Smith is not.
I don't know. I don't think so. Honestly, I would. I don't know. I don't think so. Personally.
Boy, you really convicted on this. You're like, nah, I don't think so.
I mean, look.
So answer the question. What don't you think so?
Look, DB. Look, I was nowhere near as good at DB as Cam Smith. I just want to put that out there. That is in my one lone college football season, right? But I just it just doesn't, like, physically he looks the part, but when he goes out on the field and you see him getting his drops and you see him, in his back pedals, I just don't see it.
The confidence.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't see the confidence. And you wrote in one of your columns, it was a great read, by the way. Kudos to you, about the cornerback position, right? You said that you had a source out there. I mean, you can quote your source. I don't want.
Yeah, they don't feel him. Like, you should feel a cornerback, the presence. It's like they say, the receivers say, yeah, we're running routes on air against Cam Smith.
And that's the worst thing, I feel like, you can be said about a cornerback, let alone a presumed starter.
He's not a presumed starter. I don't think there's anybody who will name him as a presumed starter.
Let me correct that. Somebody that you expected to start, not a presumed, expected to start.
There's
no way that you tell me that you drafted a guy in the second round, you didn't expect him to start. There's no way. Omar, don't make that argument.
It's happened so many times. It's happened so many times.
But that guy is usually called a word that rhymes with must.
He a little musty?
No, I said rhymes with must. Rhymes with must.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Second round pick. Like, that is a guy you expect to one day.
It happens. Noah Igbenogany was a first round pick. It didn't pan out for him. Will Davis and Jamar Taylor, I believe they were second and third round picks back in the day, back when Chris Greer had no power. And sometimes it just don't pan out for you. Sometimes it just don't. Then you did have two cornerbacks in Vontae Davis and Sean Smith. Both of them panned out before Vontae got traded, and you let Sean Smith sign as a free agent elsewhere. But they both had solid NFL careers. Devontae quit football and, just lost his desire for the game. And rest in peace to Vontae Davis. They went into this offseason saying, and I quote Chris Greer, "Oh, we can get free agent cornerbacks in the next round of free agency." Still waiting. We're a month in. Yeah. I mean, and trust me, a lot of free agents are not trying to sign until training camp arrives. So it is what it is. But yeah, I can't tell you anybody that with conviction, Ethan Bonner, Kendall Sherfield. I didn't even know who that dude was till like 2 weeks ago. Storm Duck.
A month ago.
What'd you say?
They definitely signed him a month ago.
No. They signed him after rookie camp. He was like the fifth year rookie. Okay. So that's like 2-3 weeks ago. Come on, let's be real about it. Like I didn't even know the guy exists. Now, Isaiah Johnson, Ryan Cooper Jr., BJ Adams, we'll see. As Mike McDaniel says, there are a lot of players who are trying to carve out where they land on this depth chart, and he wants you to show me. On that note, we've got mandatory minicamp. That means everybody must show up or they will be fined. And I believe Tua is supposed to be talking. That's hey. And we will get appearances from Jonnu Smith unless he'd like to subject himself to, if you miss all the camp, it's, I believe, a $98,000 fine. $98,000. Yeah, it's like 30 something a day if you miss one camp. And I say this all the time. There ain't no point in missing camp. Show up and do nothing. This is what NFL players don't understand. You can literally, the new language of the CBA is you cannot skip anything. Now, what you can do is you can show up and do absolutely nothing and not subject yourself to a fine. If I'm Jonnu Smith, I show up and I do nothing. If I'm Zach Sieler, I show up and I do nothing, and then I talk after. When the media wants to know why I did nothing, I'll explain why I did nothing. That's the appropriate way to handle these things.
Yeah.
Just like Tua a year ago, where he basically said, "The market is the market. I'm waiting on my money." That should be what Zach Sieler and Jonnu Smith say. On that note, we will be back next week to get you ready for mandatory minicamp and also tell you what we've seen, learned about your Miami Dolphins team.